what I know so far. Here in Latin, there is an letter that was for that time. I don't know. That's why Marty's saying we're just gonna get the legal to talk about it. Tell us next steps. In the meantime, Jen's heads up.
Thanks very much.
Okay, you should be able to.
How do I say I'm here, or do I want to be? Do I want to be about the video? Oh, I can just plug start video if I want to be on video. We'll keep it like that.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's for Flower Station, so you have a reading on the record. Okay. Okay. If they're not going forward, then. Can we officially call order the meeting for the planning board for Wednesday, February 11th, 4 p.m. Put it in front of me and then I'll remember. Okay, let me start again now that the microphone is turned on. I will officially call to order the meeting of the planning board for Wednesday, January 11th at 4 p.m. For anybody who is here for Yorev, they are going to continue until February 8th. So just make sure that you know that. And for numbers 2 and 3 for Flowering Spade, we have this notice that was sent to us by the lawyer, Joe Priestley. It says, I was just informed that the Block Island Land Trust, owners in common of land abutting the Flowering Spade property, did not receive notice of the hearing scheduled before the planning board this evening. It is safe to assume that you will be continuing the hearing with notice. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen and the lawyers to figure it out, and then we will work accordingly from there. I think you should probably turn it over to Nicholas Slico, town solicitor representing the planning board, or the applicant. Fine.
Good afternoon, folks. I just can't hear the speaker.
So you want to say that? Get this closer. All right. All right. Okay, I was just informed that the Block Island Land Trust, owners in common of land abutting the Flowering Spade property, did not receive notice of the hearing scheduled before the planning board this evening. Is it safe to assume that you will be continuing the hearing with notice? And this is from Joe Priestley, who is the lawyer for the land trust. And it was sent to Scott, who's the lawyer for Flowering Spade, and to Jen Brady Brown, who was the land use administrator. Now, did you hear me this time?
I did. Thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Does the applicant have a position on that?
Yeah.
Yes, I do, Nick. I just got notice of this about 5 minutes ago when we walked into the room.
Sure.
Quite unfortunate that we've got 4 witnesses that have come in from Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, myself from Providence, airplanes, ferry rides, cars here, hotel rooms lined up for a really first-class extensive presentation to the board. Like I said, it's very, very unfortunate. I checked my records to see that notice did go out, and we did what is typical in every case that you see, is that you go to the tax assessor records to see who the owner of properties are that fall within the radius map, and then you send out certified mail notices to those abutters. That's what we did. I have the green cards with me. I submitted an affidavit to the town demonstrating that the notices did go out. As far as I can tell, Nick, and I'm not sure because I haven't done any more research other than what I'm telling you I've done up to this point, I think Mr. Priestley is making some sort of an argument that the property in question, which is listed as Town of New Shoreham in the tax assessor's record, the land trust must have some sort of an ownership interest in that property as well, and that somehow someone checking the records should have known that, despite the fact that it isn't in the face of the records. So it would require doing some sort of research to go deeper, to look to see what interest the land trust has in the property, going beyond what the tax assessor's record says. And if that's the case, then it would mean doing that in every single piece of property that you ever send notice to do that additional research. My position is that the notice was effective, and that I want to proceed with the hearing by virtue of the fact that we've spent so much time, effort, and energy and money to bring everyone here. And if the board is willing to entertain our presentation, I would like to make it. And then I will talk to Mr. Priestley tomorrow. For the record, I tried his cell phone and his office phone. The minute I found out to talk about this, I couldn't reach him. But I'll talk to him about it tomorrow. We can have a healthy debate amongst ourselves on whether the notice was sufficient or not. If it was sufficient after that discussion, then he can just waive his objection. If he still feels that notice wasn't proper, what I would request as a fail-safe measure, that if that's the case, at the end of the hearing this evening, the board could make a motion that the matter get continued to the next available planning board date in the event we don't resolve it with Mr. Priestley. And if we don't resolve it, we'll just have to come back next month after renoticing it. We'll bring everybody back and we'll make another presentation to the board.
Is it legal to do something that's somewhat hybrid?
So can you use your microphone, please? So that,
Sorry. Would it be legal to listen to the people who are here, have that saved in the form of Zoom? Then that can be listened to the people who want to listen to it, and then continue the hearing next month, but at least the people here will have had a chance to speak.
I think that's a wonderful idea. It's novel, it's new, it's taking advantage of technology, but the one that should give you that answer would be the gentleman.
Sure. So I think it makes complete sense from a position where if you have an attorney and their clients objecting to notice and having concerns, I think it would take an element of agreement from them that you might not get due to their nature of being an objector. To Scott's suggestion, especially with his fail-safe proposal, as he said it, the notice is either effective or it's not. And that's something that was just brought to our attention moments ago and would probably take a requirement that we look into the land evidence records. So if it is effective, there's no issue with proceeding tonight. If it is not effective, we would simply have to redo things at the next hearing. So my suggestion would be, and council knows this, that the applicant is proceeding at their own peril if there is an issue with notice. But the thought of that fail-safe procedure isn't a bad one at all. So ultimately, my recommendation to the board would be it's the decision of the applicant if they want to proceed tonight and put forth the resources of proceeding, with the understanding that it may be hashed out later that notice is defective.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that. Absolutely.
Margie,
Yes.
where was the notice actually sent?
To the town.
Like what address?
PO Box 220, Fort
Right.
Island, Rhode Island.
So who receives that here?
I don't know the answer to that.
I can tell you, it's written on the cards.
Yeah, that's what I have. We already looked at them.
Yeah, you can tell who received it, the name is on it.
Well, somebody that Mary Aldick. So it's whoever goes to the mail that day. It doesn't mean that that's
Right. I'm just wondering where the notice is now. Like, it should have gotten into the, I mean, just. it's
It
a
was,
ta- it's the
I
town.
can confirm it was received by the town and, it was on the town council's agenda in, I think, a December 4th meeting, the beginning of December, their meeting. So it was on that public agenda. It was received by the town. The issue is the Block Island Land Trust said they didn't receive it directly and they're owners in common. So, on the vision records, the ownership is Town of New Shoreham et al. So kind of signaling there might be other owners, but those weren't listed on the vision database, the electronic, data that was pulled for abutters. So unless you went into the actual handwritten property card in the tax assessor's office or did deed research, it doesn't display the other owners of the property.
A couple other points that I think are relevant is that this objection wasn't raised at the last meeting where this was on the agenda. It was continued. You folks at my request continued it. There was no objection to notice raised at that time. That may have been a waiver on their part. The other issue is that we went out of our way to meet with representatives of the land trust, as well as the other trust organizations and conservation groups that own the surrounding property, to have a site visit with them, to show them the properties, to see whether or not they had any objections to the development project. We heard nothing but positive things at that meeting. So this move here at the last minute is stunning to us. I'm not sure what's behind it, but we'll certainly talk to Mr. Priestley about it after tonight.
So I got a no. Did I get a no?
Yeah, I think the question was up here about the Zoom, right? About playing the Zoom again. So Nick,
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes logical sense. Do I see an objector agreeing to that? Not really. So I think the short answer is a no, even though I think your logic is perfectly sound in if we could create the rule sitting here, I would say that's a good one, but the short answer is no.
Okay.
Good thought anyway.
yeah. So I would, with your permission, I would like to take advantage of the time and the resources that are here to present our case, understanding that the risk is with us, and if for some reason the notice is defective and we have to do a redo next month, we'll do a redo next month.
That we could do that and we can continue this until next month.
Yeah.
By which time we'll have an answer of either yes or no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just if we don't have an answer by the time the legal notice has to go out, then it will get continued until March. Just so you know. If we have to re-advertise everything again,
Do we have to re-advertise it again if I continue the hearing?
if there's a notice issue, typically yes.
Okay,
And if you want to go back to number 1, when you're ready.
okay. Yes, I know they're on the list first. Okay, we will talk to you again in a couple minutes. Maybe Joe will call you back between now and then. Yes, that was kind of what I was hinting. All right, number 1, Town of New Shoreham, Lot 10, Plat 10, Lot 2, Payne Road, application by the Block Island Health Services for development plan review for an addition to the medical center. The lot is located in the medical center zone, which is MC, and we are tonight going to review the information and act on any waiver requests and to set a date for the public hearing. Ray, I take it you're here representing? Okay, great. So would you want to start to give us a little presentation on what you're planning to do?
Sure, I checked with the building.
We need to use the microphone, please, because it's Zoom.
Earlier in this week, I stopped by the building department and to assure that all the necessary documents were submitted. And as I understand, everything is in order. You should have all the plans as I do on my so-called Dropbox. But if there's any questions, either myself or Charlie Weber, who's our builder's representative, owner's representative rather for the building project is here to help answer any questions you might have. It seems like, I think I was here about a year ago.
Yes, you were. I went back. I still have my papers when you were here before.
And so we've had a hard year, but, speaking for myself and for all the board members that I know of, we're very happy with our plans and are optimistic that we'll start up, if everything goes right with the planning and zoning boards and our presentation is accepted, that we'll be able to break ground shortly. The best part of the news is we've had some excellent responses from our capital campaign committee. And so we're in good financial shape. We're not asking the town of New Shoreham for a dime. And so we're very happy about the revised plans, as you will see. The biggest change, of course, has been initially we thought we would have to relocate the whole medical center operation to a separate location because we were going to take the top off the half of the building, and we didn't see how we could continue clinical operation in a building with no roof. So make a long story short, that fell through because the people we were dealing with, the people who were going to provide these temporary trailers were, they made us an offer we had to refuse. And it was going to cost us more than $1 million just for the use of some trailers that they didn't want them back. We'd have to take them to the dump. So we're going to, as you can see, construct a separate residential building to house our, temporary, our medical students who are a big part of our clinical operation, as well as visiting providers, so that it will be located in the back, sort of close to the school line, but it'll be about the same, roughly the same size as the Davidson House. And it will have 4 bedrooms for the medical students and a suite and a bedroom for a visiting provider, physician or whatever. So if there are any specific questions, I would have to go back and get my Dropbox and look at them, and so I can reference them. But basically, you should have all of the details in front of you as far as the construction goes.
And
Yeah.
next month will be the public hearings next
Public-
month.
right,
So
next
yeah, you
month.
don't need to get into.
We don't need to
any-
get in all the nitty
questions.
gritties tonight. We'll
Yeah.
do that next
Right.
month. We will go through the development plan review to make sure that we agree with you, the waivers that you've asked for tonight. And then we will set a date for the hearing.
Okay.
So that's probably it. So any questions for Ray before we go through the checklist?
I don't have any.
Okay. Charlie, anything you want to add?
No, great, some comes up pretty well.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Ray. We'll get back to you if we have any more questions on the checklist here. Okay, they've asked for glasses on here. They've asked for a waiver for number 2, which is a copy of all variants, modifications, and special use permit approvals. So they're asking for a waiver for that. And since the history, and we've gone through with them before, I don't think it's necessary. And I'm not sure they really have any, since we do remember we made this into a medical zone a few years back. They've asked for a waiver for number 3, which is all materials required to support the special use permit decision, revised to reflect the decision, including any conditions or stipulations. We haven't gotten that far yet, so
Right.
no problems there. Then jumping over to page 2, number 9, all zoning board decisions affecting the site and plans upon those decisions based, and they've submitted a copy of that for any the recent material and then ask for anything prior, back before they became a medical zone. And I think that's fine. I don't have any problems with that. Okay? Yes.
I will, submit that.
Okay, so you will take care of that. Fine. And I think that pretty much does it. So,
Can I just ask if anyone's refused on this? I didn't ask, and I'm assuming they're all sitting there, they're all refused. I mean,
you are not, you're not.
participating.
Okay. All right, then, no problem. Then I would like to recommend that we make a motion to approve the waiver request.
So move.
Okay, do I have any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And we will set the hearing for February 8th. That's next month, 4:00. I'll make a motion that we set the date for the public hearing for February 8th at 4 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you guys very much for coming. We will see you next month. 4 PM. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And we will then be prepared to ask you more nitty gritty type questions. Yes. You have a month to prepare. Thanks. All right. Okay. Number 2 and 3, we'll sort of combine together. It's for Flowering Spade, Corn Neck Road. We will have a public hearing for development plan review for an application for a special use permit under section 406 to construct a single family dwelling, accessory dwelling to be used as a game room and storage, and an accessory structure to be used for storage of a fitness studio. The single family dwelling exceeds the limit set forth in sections 306E. Planning board conditional approval for administrative subdivisions of lots 32-1 and 32-2. And number 3, again for Flowering Spade, will be an advisory to the zoning board of review for an application for a special use permit under section 406 to construct a single family dwelling structure to be used as a game room and storage, an accessory structure to be used for storage in a fitness studio. The single family dwelling exceeds the limit set forth in section 306E. Planning board conditional approval for an administrative subdivision of lots 32-1 and 32-2.
Thank you. Get started here officially. My name is Scott Spear, and I'm representing the applicant Flowering Spade. And I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to present this matter before you. We understand that we're here for development plan review, and it's our objective through the testimony of these witnesses I brought with us and the materials that have been submitted that we can demonstrate that we satisfy all of the requirements that you're looking for on a development plan review. And I want to let you know that the people that I have with me is Michael Russell, who is the engineer that did all of the site design work. Julie Jordan, who is a landscape designer, is here. Scott Rabideau, who you might have seen before, is a wetland biologist. Scott is here and done work on the project, and he's going to share some comments with you. And Greg Ehrman of an architectural firm called Hutker is here as well, and he probably has the presentation that I think will be most interesting to you, getting to see what the property is going to look like. He's also done a fabulous job of putting together some renderings so that you can actually see what the site will look like from various vantage points walking around the site. It's really a dynamic thing to experience, something that technology allows people to produce today. Some introductory remarks. I wanted to let you know that a group of the professionals that are here today did take an opportunity to meet with representatives, the Nature Conservancy, the Block Island Conservation, and the Block Island Land Trust last month to do a site visit with them because they're familiar with the project. Joe Priestley had asked me if I would be willing to set up a meeting with those people that he represents. And so we did do that. They flew over and had that meeting. And as a result of that meeting, we didn't get any negative comments from them. They were actually pleased. And since that meeting up until today, we haven't heard anything negative from them, had any problems with it. We're very satisfied.
So did you say what kind of land trust, PNC and DIC?
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Jen. I'm sorry. I'll slow down a little bit.
And just make sure that, all the witnesses identify.
When they get up, absolutely. I'll introduce them to you. So we also have been to the Conservation Commission. I don't know, Jen, have you done, do you do a written decision from Conservation to the Planning Board? It goes to the zoning. So they haven't seen it?
No,
Okay,
that's-
all right. I didn't want to waste time. So we did have a meeting with the Conservation Commission, and they unanimously agreed that they would make a positive recommendation on the project. Some of the comments that we heard at that meeting was that that it was a favorable recommendation, that the landscape plan was, in their words, commendable. They said that the applicants clearly did their homework. They were very impressed with what was done. And they put one condition on it, which is one that we had agreed to, and that is the use of toxic fertilizers, Roundup and that sort of thing. They wanted to make sure that that wasn't used, and we said, of course, we wouldn't use that. So we've been through that. It was a very good presentation. These same witnesses were there. We didn't give the same level of testimony to the Conservation Commission because we didn't have all of the same standards that are in front of you for development plan review. So we'll get into a little bit of more testimony with them, but we're going to try to make it relatively quick and move it along and have a lot of room for questions as we go along. So we're going to start with the architect. So Greg, why don't you come on up and introduce yourself to the board and give them a little bit of an idea of the experience that you have in the type of work that you do as an architect.
But before you start, I've got one question. Yeah.
There's no links to any of this in Clearface. Is there separate materials or is there everything that you show here?
I don't know. Yeah. No.
Try December 14th, December 14th has a link. And yeah, so I need to go back to which agenda? December 14th.
Try the 14th and try October's.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay. Anything? All right. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Greg Erman. I'm a partner at Hutker Architects and a principal architect on the project before you tonight. Thank you for accommodating us and for your time this evening. I thought in the beginning of this project, in the beginning of this presentation, I would take a minute just to tell you a little bit about the history, what led us to today and the project that is in front of you. We were invited to join the project team in the spring of 2021. So it was a little while ago. It's been some twists and turns along the way. In the beginning of the project, of course, we visited the island several times to meet with our client, but also to get a better sense of the place and the character of the island. Following a comprehensive review of the zoning bylaws, we set out to design a home that fit our client's needs and in our opinion, met the intent of the bylaw as it was written at that time. So in the process of working through that summer, as you guys know, the bylaw, some of the terms in your bylaw shifted and we pivoted. And of course, it was a little frustrating at the time because we thought we had the right solution. But in fact, what we found through working with the client is, I think they found a better project through that process. A project that fit their family. Their family changed a little bit and, in the time they have 3 adult children and trying to plan for the future and try to imagine sort of, how their family might grow over time. I have a series of material that I can pass out as I'm going. And I think maybe to start, I'll pass out some renderings. I wanted to sort of in the beginning review this, the key design elements we considered in putting the project together. I think as I'm talking, looking at the renderings might be helpful. So if it's okay.
But you have all, like, do they already have these or is this new information?
It's all been sent. Do they have all? They might be bigger.
I
to
don't
look at.
have a visual rendering of what.
Can I? Yeah, let's see what it is, just because typically not accepting new information.
This has all been. I just thought if it was in front of you, a larger one.
That's fine.
So this first packet, and I have one for everybody, are just the renderings of the project from on the property. So they're renderings. If you were on the property. I had a second packet that, as Scott mentioned, was a result of our meeting with the land trust. We did a walk through the Hodge Preserve.
Oh, yeah. I've seen
And
it.
so they expressed some interest about what's this gonna look like after the project.
Yes.
And I'll pass that out in a moment. So key elements we considered in designing this project. Number one, it was important to us and it was important to the owner that the building be recessive in the landscape. It's not something that sticks out. So we have a full exterior palette of naturally weathered exterior materials, primarily cedar and stone. Stone is at the base of the building. Above the stone is a mix of cedar shingles, cedar vertical board, and a cedar roof. There's no paint applied to the building.
No what?
No paint.
No, okay.
No paint. So
Lucky them.
this lets the building change with the weather and with the seasons, right? It kind of does what the grasses do. It gets wet, it gets dark. When it's sunny and salty, it gets silver. Building in this way is also, and this is the primary reason we like it as architects, it's durable and it's resilient. And again, it ages with the property. Maintenance is minimal on a building like this. We use rot resistant and durable materials. So it's designed to last. Number two, in conceiving of the project, we've always imagined it as a collection of smaller buildings. Whether you've got a house that's 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet, as architects, we like to break that apart into different volumes. Makes it more relatable. When you walk up to it, you're never next to a really tall part of the building. You're always kind of moving around the building. It feels like a collection of smaller pieces. Let's see. Part of the shift in the summer of 2001, when we reduced the size of the building, was removing a second floor from the bedroom wing. So that brought the whole project down to 1 story, which was a really important thing for our client, the homeowner, because it helped that sense of scale when you're around the building. So these multiple volumes, but also being 1 story, was sort of one of those crystallizing moments in the redesign that they really liked, and that we feel is quite appropriate. Environmentally, 100%, and this is, Mike or Julie may speak a little bit more to this, but it has to do with structured drainage on the building. 100% of the stormwater on the building and on the developed landscape is going to be managed on site. We have a ground source heat pump system that's going on the project, so it's the most efficient heating and cooling system you can put in a home, other than none. The nice thing about a system like this is everything's there is no outdoor visible equipment, so you have no noise, no visual obtrusions from. Oftentimes they go on the back of a building, like big old heat pumps, and they're outside, and that's not a problem for the homeowner, but it's a problem for the neighbor. So we don't have any of those issues with a ground source heating and cooling system. Obviously, for the homeowner, it drives down operational costs, but I'll talk a little bit in a minute about a solar electric, roof-mounted solar electric system we've proposed. So a system like this with lower energy cost to run also allows us to use a higher percentage of our roof-mounted solar, which makes the project a little bit more resilient during stormy times when the grid might go down. As a result of this, also, we have no fossil fuels on the property that will be used to heat or cool the building. So that was also an important benchmark for the homeowner. You can see in the drawings and the renderings that the pitched roof volumes are connected by a series of flat roofs. This is a design that heightens that narrative that it's a collection of smaller buildings. It's most effective, I think, when seen from a distance. When you're right up close to the building, you don't quite get the sense what the shape of the roof is, but from a distance, it breaks down the scale further, enhancing that narrative that it's a collection of smaller parts. We are putting a green roof on the flat roof areas. And again, from a distance that will, for the homeowner, that will increase the insulatory value of the roof and increase comfort in the house and reduce sound when it rains. I like the sound of rain on the roof, but on a flat roof, it can get pretty loud. So it also slows down stormwater that's running off the roof. The soil on the roof slows that down, so it can filter into the landscape slower, which reduces chances for erosion. A green roof will also, every now and again, you have to get on a roof, you have to service things, you have to clean the gutters. With a green roof, it's a more resilient roof. Again, it helps protect the building long term. There is a waterproof membrane under the green roof, which oftentimes can get damaged by, a pebble in someone's shoe that might poke through during construction, a nail that might be left up there that a board drops on. All these things that you don't know and you don't find out until 6 months or a year after the homeowner moves in. We've also had a lot of problems with, birds dropping shells on roofs. Believe it or not, big enough shell will poke a hole in a membrane roof. This type of roof, that won't happen. So it is helpful on the durability side as well, which is interesting added benefit. I always imagine the building from the sky as well, just because kind of fun to think about, but you'll see more green than roof when you're seeing it from above. On electricity, all of our power is going to be installed underground. We're also, as I mentioned earlier, we're proposing to install a roof-mounted solar electric system on the south-facing roof of the bunkhouse. We have submitted there's a number of things that our mechanical engineer addressed in a narrative that was submitted. But in that narrative, he talks about the solar panels and that they're low reflectivity. And I imagine that would be an important thing to know for abutters, and that's in the documents you've received. We will have an electric battery storage component on the project. Again, not an outside generator, but a battery where the power we make on the roof can be stored, used on a rainy day when the grid goes down. It will only be supporting emergency loads in the house, a little bit of lighting, the water pump, maybe the refrigerator so the food doesn't go bad, but it's a partial house emergency generator. It'll keep the smoke alarms going and things like that. So we like that. Let's see. So I guess I'll stop there in case there were questions. I have one more. I have a section where I'd like to address the 6 guidelines you have outlined in section 406, and I can speak to those as well. But
Okay. Please see if there's questions first. Okay, so I saw your hand first.
So looking at this packet, are you able to tell me if the lighting, let's say on the very first picture, does that lighting reflect the outdoor lighting at night, or will there be more lights added?
That reflects that there is a lighting plan that was submitted.
Mhm.
And it's for exterior lighting, it's all dark sky compliant, in keeping with Rhode Island State Building Code, and Block Island references the Rhode Island State Building Code. So it's minimal outdoor lighting that's meant to reflect what the
And will that
proposal is.
look different from what I'm looking at now?
The lights are meant to be where they are shown. Will it look different? I mean, if somebody, lights there's a limit to like the wattage of a light bulb somebody can put in, but that could affect
No,
what,
I know, I think what
is that-
Sosha's asking is, will there be more outside lighting than what's shown here?
no.
Okay.
The fixtures,
Yeah,
yeah, in regards to the
Okay.
placement of fixtures.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Real quick, again, you have this, I think, in your documents, but that's the diagram that shows the type of lighting and location of the light.
Thank you.
Diagrams always make it.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mary.
I just had a question for you about, first of all, nice presentation. Thank you. It's really good of them. I know, but so far. Just had a question, and maybe it's gonna come up later about the pool. And I was just wondering, how does the homeowner access water to fill the pool, refill the pool, discharge water when the pool has to be cleaned or maintained? And
Yeah,
maybe you're gonna answer that
I'm
later.
gonna bump that to Julie
Okay.
when Julie comes up.
Okay, we will hold that until you give your presentation. Okay. Chris or Claire, anything? I have one little comment. In our regulations, we don't allow flat roofs. So I just want to make sure that what you're doing with the green roof will be compliant with our regulations, so you don't run into a problem there. And like what you're saying, I think it works fine, but we do have certain regulations, so do check on that with
Yeah.
Jen and others at some point.
Sure.
The height, because of the, I can pull up the regs, but
I would just wanna make sure
it's
that-
at a certain height above where flat roofs would be not permitted. So you're probably under that
Yeah.
height limit.
I
'Cause
I
this is
just
24.
thought I'd flag
But
it
thank you,
before-
yeah.
Yeah,
If we're gonna have a problem, let's solve it early.
yeah. Okay, so.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll just run quickly through the parts of 406 that relate to the architecture. Some will relate, be in Julie's court or Mike's. Number one, you guys, the town asks that proposed residential structures are cited to minimize impact on view sheds, including where possible, location below the crest of a hill or ridge line and away from the center of open fields. And again, referencing back to our earlier scheme in 2021, there is a ridge on this site. It occurs between the two properties, and it's beautiful. And we said, well, yeah, it's a great spot to site a house. And part of the redesign actually took the house and slid it west, so it's on the downward slope of the west facing hillside. And again, the homeowner, that was a benefit for them as well. Oftentimes you try to, you've got a beautiful view, it's kind of nice to be on a promenade to see it, but that view on that property, if you're on the downslope, actually, it doesn't change. And that's what we studied with the homeowner on site, building view platforms. We were able to stand at the ground elevation, or the finished floor elevation, and they really liked that. What I'd like to do is on the impacting view shed question, this is why we met with the land trust on the first week in December. This second packet, a little thicker. We walked the Hodge Preserve with the land trust, Julie and I did,
Thank you.
and Julie did most of the talking because it's a lot about plants, but one question was, hey, what's this gonna look like after the building is built? And so we did our best by setting up ridge poles, lots of measurements, photographs, and then merging it with our three-dimensional model. And we did our best to represent with actual plants, trees, and bushes that Julie's specifying at the scale that they'll be when they go in. We did our best to mock up what the building's gonna look like from those 6 different vantage points. When we met with the land trust, we only went to point 3. We stopped there, we talked for a while, and then we walked back, but we figured those walking the rest of the trail would be interested in the additional viewscapes, so.
Mentioned for anyone listening watching that this information that ended up tonight is not on Clerkbase.
Okay. In case anybody's looking for this information, this is new information. It is not on Clerkbase, but I assume you will put it on later. Is that correct or not?
Depends on if this
You can continue or not. Okay. If not, you can always get a copy from at the office here.
Okay, so I'll move on to number 2, which asks that proposed residential structures are designed and cited to be compatible with its historic and cultural setting, particularly in relationship to nearby notable historic structures. Another handout. And smaller. First page are the structures, and I hope we researched the neighborhood. We identified locations related to where our property is, our project is. The second page are all the other buildings that are nearby.
Thank you. Good. Okay. I just wanted to point out that I saw no trick photography on the previous handout.
Yeah, no, was that a question or a statement?
That was a statement,
Good, yes,
so that's a good thing.
yeah, yeah, no, it's better to be accurate. So relative to this, point number 2, I would just say, as architects, we begin every project by looking at the existing context, the neighborhood. Within most projects we do have context. There's, it might be on a big property, a small property, but there's always character. And sometimes it's built structures, sometimes it's landscape, sometimes it's trails, sometimes it's the water and what it looks like from the water. In our case here, as you see in the diagram, there are notable historic structures along Corn Neck Road, which we've surveyed from, public viewscapes and diagrammed. So we have a sense of where they are, and we've also inventoried the beautiful but non-historic structures that are nearby. You can see in the diagram that there's not a lot. It's pretty spread out, and we in doing this work, we didn't feel like proximity is, I guess, depends on your perspective, what's close and what's not close. I think the nearest building to our project is, I think, 450 feet away, but the next one is 600 and then 1,000. So, everything's pretty spread out here. We've designed the building. Again, our focus on this was sort of what would a farmer do, like in terms of the detailing. Obviously, it's maybe not a farmhouse that would have been built, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, but we really drove to keep the details simple, not fussy, and let the lines of the architecture, those individual volumes, just try to read through. And in our opinion, that references sort of the scale of a lot of the architecture you see around the island, and that was our goal. I'm going to move to number 3. The area of the site disturbance is to be minimized, just as necessary for the construction of the building. I assume in the construction of the building is also the construction of the landscape, and it is, of course, our goal to, this is important to all parts of the project team. The more we disturb, the more that has to get put back together, and there's expense and time to all of that. There's a limit of work that's put up, and it's expected to be adhered to during construction. Julie or Mike may have more to add to this, but this is important to us as well. We want to keep the footprint. We want to manage where trucks get parked during construction. That's usually one of the hardest things to do when you have a busy job site. We don't want people parking all over the street, all over the field. There'll be a parking area, there'll be a stockpile area, and there'll be an area where the building's getting built. Number 4, all existing stone walls on the site are preserved or reconstructed as part of the site plan. This is also consistent with our plan. We are proposing to repair and reconstruct part of an existing wall that defines the eastern edge of this property. And it's one of the more important walls there's a number of walls on the property. Some are buried in vines and aren't entirely visible. This one is. It runs between the 2 properties, the uphill lot and the western lot. And it's an organizing line in our, as you can see in the site, our building and all the buildings relate to that stone wall. So it's sort of an organizing element in the design. So the wall really is central, and it's critical for us that the wall get built back in the character of a Block Island wall. So we're gonna find the person that does that best. Sure they are here somewhere. Almost done. Number 5, screening of the proposed building is achieved by use of existing mature vegetation with additional plantings as required by the planning board. You know, again, this was our, the renderings that we presented are the intention. I think it is our goal to not have the building stick out. And again, more of this is in Julie's camp than mine, so Julie will speak well to this. And number 6 is really not applicable. We don't have an attached garage. As architects, we like detached garages. It's a healthier way. And you know, you really have to be careful with the garages that are attached so you don't get fumes and toxic, you know, elements kind of tracked into a house. So just something we're happy that is already included in the project. So that is it for me right now. I'm happy to take questions or if Scott had anything to add.
Questions?
No.
Margie, I just want to follow up.
Yes,
with
go ahead.
Greg on so the regulations regarding flat roofs are, it's 28 feet, so your building height is below 24, right? No, just have Greg confirm the flat roofs do not.
Yeah, our flat
are
roofs are in
below
the neighborhood of 16 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
quite a
below
bit
the
below.
max.
I was sure you were all right, but I thought I'd better
Yeah.
mention it anyway.
And I'll say, we used all of that height restriction when we had that second story. But it's, you know, now our highest roof is about 6 feet below the max height. So that's like a 6-foot knee wall in an attic space that was gonna be a bedroom. And now it's just brought down. So no attic space. So.
Good, okay.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Keep things moving along here expeditiously. The next gentleman that's going to come and speak is Michael Russell, who's the engineer, and he'll walk you through the site plan, talk to you about drainage and whatnot. I would like to note that the town engineer, Jeremy and Associates, has reviewed all of Mike's material. He had noted that there was some stuff that he would like to look at as well. We submitted that and we looked at it also. So his conclusions are that all of the stormwater requirements for on-site retention have all been met to the town standards. And Mike will confirm that and show you how it's being done. He recommended that we file a operation and maintenance plan for rain gardens. We did that, he looked at that, said it's okay. He wanted to know when the OWTS would get approved. It did get approved. Mike will talk about that. He looked at that as well. He said it meets the town standards. And they wanted to see the easements that we would be putting in place to get across one lot to the other one. We submitted that. Those are all good too. So Mike, why don't you go ahead and let them know who you are, what you do, and what you did on this project, and give them a quick walkthrough through the site plan.
Okay, happy to. Good evening. My name is Mike Russell. I'm a principal with LDEC Engineering Consulting. Our offices are in Portsmouth. Greg's going to be a tough act to follow here, but our involvement in the project is probably the least interesting of all the consultants. But we were tasked with being the civil engineering consultant and the land surveyor for this project. We started off by surveying the property, which kind of gave us the template to design from. But our task on the civil engineering front were quite simply stormwater, wastewater, site plan, and grading, you know, in support of the applicant and architect's vision, which Greg did a great job of presenting. So to Scott's point, one of the first things that was done here was, or actually a couple of simultaneous exercises, was we prepared a administrative subdivision to redivide the common boundary between these two parcels, which was before the board back in the summer, correct? Back in June, I believe it was. And then we also filed a joint septic and wetlands permit with DEM. Because of the presence of freshwater wetlands on the property. And then obviously the dwelling has to be served by on-site wastewater treatment system. So that permit was issued by DEM as a insignificant alteration, and we also issued a RIPDES permit. Because the limit of disturbance, I think Greg touched on limited disturbance in his presentation, was over an acre. We're roughly 2.25 acres of disturbance. So that permit was issued. Scott had mentioned also the town's engineer reviewed the comprehensive site plan, which includes stormwater management, their landscape practices, rain gardens, namely, we do have a subsurface infiltration system. But a lot of the, because of the scale of the project, you get a lot of natural infiltration through the landscape and hardscape, and these practices serve to provide that ultimate mitigation to the rain gardens. All the utilities are to be underground to the extent we can. It'll be private drinking water supply to serve the dwelling. Minimal disturbance outside of the principal area. So that's, pretty much what we provided for the project. Happy to take any questions the board members might have.
Okay, good. Thank you. Problems, questions? Questions from the audience? Okay. Question, I'm sorry, that was not on my list, but I'll put it on. I'll put it on.
Like the ability to get cars in and out of the site, what do they travel on? What's the material being used? What kind of drive is the site?
Yeah, so it'll be by way of a typical residential driveway, about 12 feet in width. For stormwater purposes, we assumed it paved, kind of a worst case, but I can let Greg, what the ultimate material might be, Greg, or Julie, for the driveway. Keystone.
Okay.
Which is
Permeable. That's all.
permeable,
That's,
yeah.
that's what we want to know.
And there's sufficient access for rescue vehicles getting in and out?
Yeah, we believe so, and I don't think we've received any negative or comments to the contrary from town departments.
Any other? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mike.
All right, so while we're in the ground looking at and talking about water and stuff, why don't we have Scott Rabbitt come up? Scott's a wetland biologist. I'm sure he's testified on.
Yes, he has.
For you, I know Scott actually represented the town on some projects as well. He'll tell you what his role in this project was, what he looked at, what his findings were, and what his conclusions are in terms of what the impacts this project will have on the environment habitat.
Sure.
Thanks. Good to see you all. Last time I was on Zoom.
I was gonna say.
When I was here.
Glad we're over that phase.
All right. Nice to see you all in person. My name is Scott Rabidou. I'm a coastal and a freshwater wetland biologist. My company is Natural Resource Services, Inc. We are located in Harrisville, Rhode Island, which is as far away as you can get from Block Island and still be in Rhode Island. It's always nice to be here. I want to correct one thing on the driveway. The DEM permit requires a crushed stone driveway, which with 3/4 inch stone. So the pea stone, it's got to be 3/4 inch
Okay.
in order to meet the standard for a pervious driveway, and that's a condition. So I did want to just make sure that was put on the record right away, so you all knew that. My job was to delineate the wetlands and assist LDEC with the wetland permit, and I did that initially in February of 2020. I did the wetland delineation on the property back then. The wetland is a small shrub wetland with a pond. Under the old freshwater wetland regulations, it was considered forested less than 3 acres in size with a pond greater than 1/4 acre in size, so it received a 50-foot perimeter wetland. LDEC submitted the application prior to the implementation of the new regulations, so that's what stuck. So this was permitted under the old regulations. We'll point out under the new regulations, since somebody may ask the question, this is going to be considered a swamp less than 1 acre in size with a pond interior. And wherever the pond edge is within 50 feet of the edge of the wetland, it gets an additional buffer zone. So a swamp less than 1 acre in size receives a 25-foot buffer. Because it has the pond interior, it receives an additional 25. So it received a 50-foot perimeter wetland under the old regulations. And in most instances, it will receive a 50-foot buffer zone under the new regulations. The only difference under the new regulations is that there is a 100-foot jurisdictional area. So if there's any additional work proposed on the property, that because the perimeter wetland is being protected throughout, if there is any additional work proposed on, say, the Zeke lot, not on this property, but on the Zeke lot, that falls within 100 feet of that delineated wetland, there would need to be a subsequent permit to DEM. So that's kind of, it fell on the cusp of both the regulations. So you can understand that the buffer zone is consistent under the old and the new for this lot. Primarily rolling topography. If you look at the aerial photographs from the 1939 photo, it was all farm field or agricultural field of some kind. Over time, started to turn into some of the shrubby areas. Now it's a mixture of shrub and field areas. Pretty standard habitat for that area. As Mike Russell pointed out, the DEM permit did issue as an insignificant wetland alteration, and that's because all work was kept outside of that 50-foot buffer zone or perimeter wetland. Buffer markers are required as part of the permit. That's the only other issue. The two conditions of the permit that weren't boilerplate were that we put buffer markers up at the limit of the 50-foot perimeter wetland, so it's demarcated for the property owner, and that the driveway be the 3/4 inch crushed stone. So both of those are in there, and both of those will be adhered to in the final plan. Mr. Spear did ask me to look at the overall habitat so that I could provide you with how this development will impact the overall habitat. As you all know, and as we learned when we met with the land trust, there's over 360 acres of preserved land surrounding this property. So when I did my habitat assessment, I looked at the adjacent properties and I took the area from West Beach Road up to Sachem Pond to the north and from Corn Neck Road to the west. And there's about 350 acres there. Of that 350 acres, only 12.3% of that land is used for residences, are currently used for residences. The 2.3 acres of additional residence land use is only going to bump that number up from 12.3% to 12.9%. So it's a very small amount of increase in human habitation in this area. And as I discussed when we were with the Conservation Commission, the fact that the surrounding area, over 80% of the surrounding area is preserved, there's not an issue of cumulative impacts. Oftentimes I'll talk about the surrounding habitat, but it's all in private ownership. So you have to take into account when you're doing a habitat assessment, what's the 10, 20, or 30 years. In this case, there's very little cumulative impact that will result from human habitation to the habitat types that are here, just because of the fact that, your town and your land trust has preserved those areas. So I thought that was very important to point out. The other issue I wanted to point out in my testimony is, because it's in your planning rules, the Department of Environmental Management has the area in general listed as a natural heritage area. It's got a natural heritage area designation on it. The process in the state of Rhode Island is that you contact the DEM. There is a gentleman who's one of the principal planners there named Paul Jordan. We contacted him on November 4th. He sent us an email, and in the email he detailed all of the previous sightings of rare or endangered or threatened species within a half mile of the site. There were 4 that were cited. They were all very old. There were 2 plant species, a bayonet grass and a seaside knotweed. Both of those are coastal plants, so they're centered along the coastline. They wouldn't be present on this property. Both of those are, the bayonet grass is state concern and the seaside knotweed is state threatened. The last observations were 1987, so it was quite a long time ago. There have been additional surveys in those areas since then, and they have not been seen. So that was the last time they were seen. The two animal species were actually avians, and it's the yellow crowned night heron and the black crowned night heron. The yellow crowned night heron was last observed in 1993 and the black crown in 1989. Both of those bird species, the yellow crowned night heron is, we're at the northern limit of its range. So that's an occasional observation that would probably take place. The black crowned night heron I've seen, so they're a little more common. Both of those like to feed in coastal marshes and in freshwater marshes. So again, from a wildlife habitat perspective, they're going to be more concentrated if they are seen along the coastal areas down by Sachem Pond or Middle Pond in both of those areas. They're not going to be on this site. So those were the two natural heritage things. And just, to summarize from an overall assessment perspective, 2.5 or 2.3 acres of a 4.6 acre site will be utilized for the residential development. The remaining areas of the lot, as you'll see on the landscape designer's plan, are going to be left in meadow habitat and in naturalized habitat. Project has minimum grading. If you look at the grading design that LDEC and the architect did, there's very minimal grading. In fact, most of the grading is for the rain gardens that we need to put in place. That the house is also set off from the high point. So it fits better into the landscape than just sticking it on the top of the hill and letting it be the promontory. So from that perspective, it seemed to be a very well-designed plan. The landscape designer will speak to all of the native woody vegetation that's going to be incorporated around the perimeter for both screening and for aesthetic purposes, but it is all native. There will be no hard fencing to obstruct wildlife movement on the property. So that's going to be, completely open in the off season for wildlife to utilize that area. As the engineer pointed out, you've got stormwater management. This is for protection of groundwater, which is an important part. That is going to be handled through the rain gardens that are on site. But the other important component for water quality is the fact that, and the DEM regulations or the manual, the stormwater manual speaks to this, you've got a qualifying pervious area. So if you didn't want to do rain gardens, you can utilize this qualifying pervious area. Well, we've got almost 2.5 acres of qualifying pervious area on top of the rain gardens. So the minimum amount of impervious surfaces that will be created by the project will have well above any standard threshold for water quality treatment that would take place. So there's going to be really no impact to groundwater from my perspective from the impervious surfaces. And finally, there was a denitrification system. Mike he pointed out that he had an OWTS approval, but it's an Advantech system. So it's an advanced treatment system. So the effluent from the stormwater is also going to get highest level of treatment prior to discharge. So from the natural resources perspective, in my opinion, the project has been well designed, fits into the landscape, and will have a negligible effect on the overall wildlife habitat values for the reasons that I stated. From a groundwater perspective, it exceeds the thresholds for all of the state standards for treating stormwater, and most of the surfaces, a green roof, are designed such that we're going to protect that groundwater resource to the greatest degree practical. I'll gladly answer any questions.
Good. Any questions?
No.
You were thorough. This is a very nice report. Thank you.
Good to see you.
My name is Scott Dooley. Those of you that love plants will enjoy this.
I volunteer.
She was very good. She had the Conservation Commission spellbound with what I can't remember who the woman was that just absolutely loved flowers and stuff. And they got into this back and forth about different types of plants. so. it's
Button
really-
Bush will do it that
it's
to
really
you.
good. Talked to my wife about talking to Julie, and she wants me to bring her to our house here. Julie, go ahead and tell her what you have up to see for this project.
Good evening. I'm Julie Jordan, landscape designer, plant enthusiast. From the beginning on this project, I mean, I can bring up the plan and kind of walk you through it, but I'm just gonna start with the design brief from the client. Our intention is to keep the agrarian feel and the rolling look of Block Island. Minimal driveway surfaces, no retaining to the gravel, very grassy edges, lots of native plants, and rebuilding of the stone walls, and not competing with those stone walls with a lot of grade change that needs to be retained. My landscape design philosophy is to work with the land and the area or town to feel like it's always been there. It makes it seem more authentic and a better sense of place. One of the things I like to focus on is the hedgerows around the property and keeping those for nature and for protection for the town and the vistas of the developed area. So one of our tactics will be to bring in large species that are already existing, like Viburnum dentatum, that would be large enough to be above the deer browse line, and kind of keep the ones that are there and recreate different sizes and native habitat so that you're not demolishing what's already thriving. If it is contributing, it will stay. Being from an island myself, I understand how hard it is to establish plant communities here. So my intention from the very beginning will be to keep the limit of work as small as possible and use as much succession meadow planting as we can, which means not disturbing the meadows that are there, and opening them up to invasive species and a lot of maintenance and things that we don't really want to get into. That being said, we will have to reseed some of the meadows, and we'll be trying to use the most local eco types as possible. My plan incorporates a pool for the family. It's remote and covered from any vistas from anywhere. It measures about 18 by 40. It does not have pool deck associated with it. It's turf grass around it. As far as the filling of the pool, I would assume that that'll go from the well water on site. And now pools are closed loop systems and they're saltwater. So the pool doesn't get drained ever, and the backwash is contained in all the equipment. So it's not like things get overflown or drained from the pool by industry standard. So I don't see that being a environmental contributor. The patios are mostly adjacent to the house and for their enjoyment. There's not a lot of development outside that. There is a vegetable garden and an orchard, which will be organically maintained. And the orchard is more for aesthetics, not necessarily for the crop. So not using pesticides should be easy. The eco and environmental attributes of the plan are that we'll be using a fescue grass that's called Black Beauty. It's a low input for water and fertilizer. It basically is pretty tough. It's not like your typical bluegrass, so it doesn't need as much water. There will be irrigation, but the idea would be to let it turn, brown like it should in August, and this turf will be a little bit more resilient to that. The succession meadows, which I've already mentioned, removal and remediation of invasive species as necessary without the use of herbicides, probably manual. Minimizing any new stone walls and tapering the grade. So there's one stone wall across the face of the house because there's a 10 or 12 foot grade change on that rolling hill. So to make a little flat space near the house, there's a small 18-inch stone wall, and then the rest of the berm is tapered. The rain gardens are an interesting piece that have been being used a lot, and a lot of people don't really know what they are, but they're a depression made with the earth, but planted with native plants to receive
rain and storm water and help it percolate, and they are really gorgeous. So I think this having two rain gardens is a really nice design feature. There will be a native tree grove near the orchard, but mostly it will be meadow. So we're going to be adding some of the trees that maybe would have been there before its agrarian history, but in a low depression. So mostly everything you'll see from any public ways will be rolling meadow.
Okay, questions, comments? Mary?
Yeah, just thank you for thank you. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And thank you for the answer about the pool water.
Yeah.
Because it's becoming something we're, faced with. How
Yeah.
do people fill their pools? How do they clean them? if They need to. And if they're using their well water, if they're using, I don't know, what does that take? 40,000 gallons of
Yeah,
water?
it's a lot of water, but I think that most pool companies now recommend that you keep it full all the time, even
Mm.
when it's covered.
Mhm,
So it is only a one-time fill,
mhm. And
if
they'll
you're
use-
doing it right.
Right. And they'll use their well water.
Correct.
Over a period of time? Is it sort of slow trickle so the aquifer can refresh itself?
But it usually takes, the times that I've filled a pool, it takes about 2 days. It
Mm.
would never be enough to drain an aquifer or
Sure, sure.
diminish a well. So
I'm
it would-
more asking for neighbors who are concerned.
yeah, I wouldn't, that would be, actually, I don't think it would affect the groundwater in the way that the well would move. You speak to that?
Well, I mean, I can speculate, I can't imagine,
Mhm.
you mentioned neighbors, I mean, there's considerable distance from the next dwelling,
I can't imagine
proximity to this house.
wells are competing.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
They also have a radius. The wells have a radius to make sure that they're not.
Well, this came up with
Go ahead.
the ELD projects on Corneck Road, but Corneck Road already has a history of concern.
Very shallow wells.
Coast Guard.
I mean, at Coast Guard Road, sorry.
It's Coast Guard, but it's a very shallow, they're shallow
Yeah.
wells.
Right. And the neighbors are in close proximity.
Yeah.
And so their option was to truck it in.
Mhm.
But it just doesn't seem like there's too many neighbors.
It's really well. It's just that it's not a shallow well.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So you're getting a fraction.
Mhm.
And your neighbor may not be on that fraction.
Right.
Usually when you're down 200-300 feet, that's
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks.
So to follow up on that, as long as you're talking about wells, what risk, if any, is there of salinification of this particular well? Because that is becoming a concern on the island, and you may want to look into desalination system of sorts.
Obviously, when you drill the well, that's
Mhm.
is fresh. That risk.
But as the sea level rises, that will only get worse. Yeah, okay.
Right, anything else?
Oh, just one more thing, Julie. I drove in, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and when you're driving off Corneck Road, you take a left,
Mhm.
go into the property.
Those big stones.
Yeah, are you just gonna pick them up and move them? So. is
We're,
that
yeah,
big?
we're gonna store them
Oh,
and then
good.
put them back so that an emergency vehicle can get in there. But
Oh,
I
that's
intend to put them back exactly where they are.
Okay.
Yeah, in both where you enter the driveway and from Corneck Road.
Yeah.
But I think they do need to be a little wider.
Yeah.
for-
Just to care. for-
It's a little
yeah,
dangerous.
Yeah. Okay.
And
that's
we
all.
don't want to impede our trucks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, that's it for the witnesses.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any questions.
I think we'll see if there's questions. I'll start with the board if there are questions, and then I'll go to the audience. Okay, Sosha?
Simple question, I hope. It is my understanding that whenever you break ground, that the law requires, that if you find any Native American artifacts, that that be reported.
Yes.
You're aware of that?
Yes. And they have jurisdiction, the site will
Okay.
be shut down until an investigation is done.
Okay, as long as you know.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, questions from the audience? Yeah.
At least on the plans that I saw, I did not see any kind of fence around that.
Oh, That's required by law.
And I thought that was.
Yeah, if that, it is a requirement, there will be one that would be put up, it would be part of the building permit process, we would have to put up a fence, and if you want us to submit something to show you what the fence would look like, how high it would be, what material we made it to do that, but, yeah, that's.
The intention would be that it would be a full grade fence in the plantings that are on the, edge of the pool. And then it would be.
Maybe return these.
Oh, sure, yeah. Good one, it can be recycled.
It costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
When we meet again in February.
Oh, well,
They're
yeah.
not in order. Thank you. So how about these two? They're beautiful. Inexpensive.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'll keep mine if you, yeah, I'll keep, I know somebody will have a set. Yeah, if we, that way if somebody wants it, I've got a set, you can come borrow it. We don't need more than one.
So,
Any other comments or questions? Because I am going to continue this until the February meeting or the March meeting, whatever comes first. So if there are any questions or comments? Okay, if not, I will make a motion that the meeting be continued until, and I will say February 8th, but we understand that if it has to be continued beyond that, we can do so. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye, motion carries.
Thank you, and just
Thank-
for clarification purposes, if we resolve the notice issue, the meeting on the 8th will be just for you to make a decision?
That's correct.
All right, if there is a notice issue, I'll.
Then you talk to-
out with Jen, make it's out in time, and then we'll be back on the 8th to present the case again, if need be.
And, it will probably be listed as, it needs to be listed as public hearing for next month.
Right.
Because
Whether or not there's a decision rendered. See.
we'll have to open the meeting. We could also close it 3 minutes later. I mean, that's not it's not an issue, but
Okay.
that way
Well,
we're trying to
need
cover
be
all.
here- We need to be here that day anyway.
Yeah.
Either for the decision or for the hearing, we'll resolve that for.
Yes,
for the
work,
notice period.
work with Janice, Allison, and
Okay,
best of luck.
all right.
Thank you all very much for coming. We enjoyed your presentation.
And Scott, good to see you. Now requesting a continuance for, zoning.
So, absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's fun. All right. Okay, I want to make a motion to continue the public hearing for Christopher Joyab for until February 8th. And is that their request that I am making this continuance? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, next I want to turn it over to Sosha. She's going to talk a little bit about some correspondence that she's put together on regarding housing solutions.
Okay, and don't forget after me.
That's right, got it. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. First, I'm going to be reading some of this because I'm not very good at extemporaneous speaking. First and foremost, my purpose in presenting this proposal to the planning board and the town council possibly is to have a serious discussion. The outcome may result in a totally different concept, and that is fine as long as we get another step closer to the goal of making housing more affordable, especially for the working class living on this island, has been accomplished. Secondly, this plan preserves the character of Block Island as much as possible because the proposed changes are relatively small and incremental. Third, these solutions will save money. They require no new or minimal construction, thus saving on the cost of land and materials. And when I was reviewing these notes this morning, I immediately found an error, of course. I want you to cross out the word affordable on page 2, capital A1. It says convert single-family homes to affordable multiple rental properties. Cross out the word affordable there, and I'll explain later. So I think proposal A is probably the most radical. And because it is, I would like to recommend that the following requirements for proposal A be that all applications require a special use permit, and the reasons are listed below, and that the board set up a predetermined limit of permits per zone per year. 3, that there be a sunset clause because it's something new and we don't, we want to be cautious. And that the structures must be available for year-round residents only. So let's take a look at A. I won't spend much time now. I'm just introducing these thoughts for you to digest at home and think about. Okay, use as an alternative to redrawing the zoning districts, which is one approach to create more housing, obviously. I'm suggesting that we use pre-existing structures to expand the housing pool. Allow for the following uses otherwise not permitted under present zoning regulations, one property at a time. It could be number 1, convert single-family homes to multi-family rental properties, or 2, convert single-family homes to duplexes for home ownership as well as rental. 3, allow 513 accessory buildings to be sold separately to single year-round families. And the reason I thought of that one is it's overall less expensive. It gives an opportunity for home ownership, but it is less expensive. First of all, the structures are smaller than most homes are, and they will receive far less land to go with them. 4, increase the opportunity for family-owned condos and apartments. So these are what I would consider pretty radical ideas. And I don't want to debate the shortcomings or the how to, because that's not the point. The point is to lay it out on the table and to digest it further at a later date. Now, B is more traditional, which says transform underutilized spaces into affordable homes. And the ones I listed below there, we've talked about in the past, but we've never really explored them. C, have the town approach homeowners who have no heirs to sell their home at greatly reduced prices to the town. This could include a sale prior to the owner's death with the stipulation that they can remain in the home. Now, and I came up with that idea because of the reading I've done. And cities out west, now I grant you these are cities, but out west, cities are buying up homes in order to preserve a housing pool for their working class so that they can rent them out at affordable rates, and so that they don't get bought up by the rich and become exclusionary. D, I don't think the realtors would be happy with this one. Approach homeowners to give the town the right of first refusal on properties coming to market to be used for affordable housing. So B, C, and D are affordable housing, whereas A is any kind of housing. And then in the reading, I came across some suggestions on finance. Alternative construction methods might include things like modular construction, which our housing board already uses for their affordable housing. Panelized construction, 3D printing. I tell you, I've been watching one program after another on TV, and the 3D printing saves tons and tons of time and money. Repurposed shipping containers, not everybody's, but anyway, I just thought I'd share it. So all of this has the potential of saving up to $25,000 per structure. In Baltimore, they have a home funded, and this is Baltimore, Maryland. It's an online crowdfunding platform that allows home buyers to use gifts from family and friends for the down payment on a home. I just thought I'd put it out there. Who knows? What I didn't know was that when people rent homes, they do not build up a credit score. It doesn't get counted towards it. And there's some places in America now where the banks are provide a service that includes rent as a factor of credit scores in order to qualify for a future mortgage. And I was thinking nowadays rents are skyrocketing and probably competitive with mortgage payments for other families. So that would be a way for someone to become able to buy a home at some point. Number 4, have the town-run rental relief programs. And number 5 might not really apply to the island, but I included it anyway. It says engage big tech and big business. Big tech is starting housing projects and investing in philanthropy for affordable housing. Microsoft recently launched a $500 million affordable housing initiative. And then 6, take advantage of HUD rental vouchers. So those are the only things that I could come up with that were not already proposed to the planning board. And I think what I'm asking the planning board to do is to decide not so much on what to promote, but what are our next steps going to be? Are we going to wait for the town council to approach us, with a plan, and that we then examine and either approve or not? Or do we, as a planning board, continue the ball rolling towards solutions for housing shortages on this island? So I'll leave it to you guys.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sosha. So any comments or questions for Sosha?
Yeah, Sosha, first of all, thanks for doing this. It takes time
Yeah,
and focus. And it is something some of this is what we've discussed from just the general topic. I think sometimes we're just reacting to need. And so I thank you for starting this more of a discussion about
Right.
other ideas. What else, what other avenues do we have? We haven't explored
Yeah.
yet. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess my next question for you all is, do we want to discuss this further at another meeting after we've had a chance to think about it in a while? Or do we want to send this on to the town council with the idea that maybe some of this could be discussed when we have our meeting with them, which, by the way, is January 19th at 4 p.m. So this could be one of the things that we would discuss with.
Bring up some of the points that you agree with at your town council meeting, but
I mean, that's,
vetted all of those might not.
right, we won't get these all vetted, but I mean, some of these things that I agree with is a philosophical decision by the town, like for every building that the town's put up, I've always thought they should incorporate housing, but that hasn't been the philosophy of the town. When they do new construction or what have you. They should
Right.
incorporate an employee housing element, just like any business would out here. I mean, we're a business. But I also think we should look at the evolution of the affordable housing projects that exist that start on, I guess, Beacon Hill and all the way to Cherry Hill, like all the different ones. I'm in one of them, and
And you are too, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a list of all of them.
well,
How they
how they were built in the process, because honestly, the ones that the what's ours called, Ambrose Lane, is that what they call it, Jen?
I think it was like Pilot Hill.
Pilot Hill. I mean, that was a directive from the town council and the town manager at the time. They tasked somebody to do it and she did it and it was done. And honestly, when I look at all the processes, I like that one the best because it was, you know, the more committees and people involved, the slower it goes and the more expensive it gets. It does. That's fact. And if you analyze all these projects that we've had that exist now, that are still keeping us barely above the 10%, I think you'll find that to be true.
Yeah, a large, percentage of the housing projects were what was.
Yeah.
Spearheaded the project.
Yeah. And then the other element to all of this that is the enforcement on the deed restrictions part of it, because it's maddening to have homes that are quote unquote affordable where the owners aren't there. And that has to be looked at. And I don't think, you know, I've broached this topic with members of the housing board, but
Yeah.
they're not in it. They don't want to be put in that position. So that has to be solved, you know, before we get too further down the line, because there's, you know, a lot of this is good idea. Like, these are all good ideas. I don't necessarily agree with like the 513. That presents a whole different set of problems as far as purchasing 513s, like a whole different set of problems. But I think the converting, the approaching landowners, you know, like, I think the Alette's intention was, that was a long time ago. I like her intention of what she wanted to do with her estate for lease out.
Right.
She set that up. You know, that was
years ago.
That was years ago. That was a good idea.
Yeah.
And I still like those types of opportunities, if they present themselves, should be taken. The town has first right of refusal. I mean, I sat on the town council and Andre and I asked the question, when these condos come up for sale over at Peckham's, they're coming in front of us. Well, if we have first right of refusal, why aren't we buying them? Like, I don't understand what the first right of refusal is. If we're not gonna do it, like, that should be, again, a philosophical change. Why wouldn't we? I mean, I never understood why we said no. And, you know.
And back to your comment about the, like, covenants and restrictions that are on many projects, most
Yeah.
of the projects. You, as a planning board, review all of those documents, so you might want to flag that, for the next application, and just make sure that the solicitor suggests language to allow enforcement.
Right, the consistency between, and then, you know, there's two different, you have our housing board and then you have BED and then you have the town. Like, there's affordable housing should be under one umbrella, one organized body. And if it's municipal, it should. If it's public-private partnership, not necessarily. But if it is, I'm saying if it is municipal, municipal should be under municipal.
It's the housing board, that's municipal.
Right, but BED isn't. BED oversees
Private.
West Side 20 and,
Okay, that was the housing board.
and then the town has first right of refusal on ours.
But
And
some
it
of these
doesn't have to
changes,
go through BED.
some of these changes will
single one's
require the
different.
town council to act. That's why I'm wondering if we want to send this on to the town council
Just for thought.
for a thought, and then we can make some
Right.
comments.
It's not a recommendation. It's to look over and think about.
Well, you only have discussion on your agenda, so you could put it on your agenda, which is February. And it's agenda for action, if you would like to vet out anything, any ideas or.
So you have.
Jen, we could,
Sorry to interrupt.
Go
I
ahead.
don't want to, I'm
Yeah.
catching the ferry, but I don't
Yeah, no.
want to stop the conversation. But I just wanted to say, yeah, so next week, the town council planning board have the joint meeting on housing. So
Right.
certainly some of these,
We
you know,
can-
I think
we-
it'll be a informal conversation and
we
that's
can
what the
mention some of
town
them.
council
Don't
is
have to have a
looking
paper.
for.
Yeah.
Thoughts and ideas and new strategies. And so I think so should certainly some of these and others that the planning board have at that meeting, you can raise them. I wouldn't send this document yet to the town council formally from the planning
Okay.
board, because I think the planning, I want to make sure the planning board has a consensus. There's some concerns maybe with a couple strategies, like the 513. And so I think we need to kind of,
Okay,
I'd like to refine that a little bit more. Maybe we could prioritize, like the
Okay.
planning board, some of those strategies, especially, and I think next week,
we can
that will
mention a
help
few of these things.
inform,
Yeah.
after that conversation, have it on the following agenda, and then prioritize some of those strategies that you'd like to implement, so.
I mean, social, you touched
That
on,
makes sense.
I mean, you obviously did a lot of reading and watching.
I
And,
did.
and the other thing.
Thank you,
I
Allison.
want to mention, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I sent an article actually to the first warden a couple weeks ago about the same problem that every resort community is having, particularly out west, but places like Aspen and Vail back in the 80s weren't buying land for conservation. They were buying land for affordable housing. All right. And so they got ahead of the curve, but they're still not, that wasn't enough. But, there's plenty of communities that are in the same position as us. And we, I think, look at what's worked for them. It might not necessarily apply for, our 10 square miles of dirt, but. Yeah, well, it'd be different if we were 100 square mile island dirt, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's.
I was gonna say-
The number of schools.
Yeah.
Made the housing, and that's
Yeah.
one thing that
Mm.
Like, we just
think is
redid
really
it, yeah.
important. You are looking at rentals and, home ownership, and then different ways to, create them.
Yeah.
So I'll send you
We just
the
redid it.
list
Yeah.
that I have
We did the, was
That
it
would be
513?
nice.
Sure.
like the unofficial.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great for you.
Okay, and we can bring, as I said, we can bring up some of these ideas on the
Right.
19th.
You said the 19th. I thought it was the 18th.
I have down here on the 19th. At 4 PM. It's a Thursday.
Okay.
So, we have, two, sets of minutes to approve. One you just got, so let's take a minute and just have a chance to read through it. And while you're kind of looking at that, we also had in our mailboxes a, flyer and a comment about, the 3-hour voluntary workshop via Zoom. A couple of us have been talking, Jen, about having you set it up and we could all come in here and do it one day using the big screen. Is that, would that be possible?
I don't know if that will be possible, but one thing you could, just look at your notes and see if you took training already, because some of you did some training, and if you already did it, you don't need to do this.
Okay, I've taken the training before.
OSHA, Mary. You have it's a year. It's a mandatory, state the state is mandating training for, planning board, zoning boards, and historic district commissions.
So you could take this on your own, you don't have to do it for straight 3 hours.
No, you could do this you can sign up on your
Yeah.
own device.
Take it at your leisure.
Take it, like, it's not as important or anything like that.
And we were always suggesting it because
3 hour lecture.
most of us sort of postpone things.
I kind of like to
You're,
watch
I
it as
see
a
what you mean,
group.
Margie. It's nice to offer that.
So,
I would count if it's a chunk of time, or maybe 2 1/2-hour sessions, to your point.
I mean, I was gonna say,
I'll bring the popcorn and wake everybody up.
Yeah,
But-
it's through the state. So the statewide planning, is charged with creating training. We'll have more training throughout the year. This is the first, training session that they're offering. So.
Does it make sense to offer that, Joe?
Marcus idea? I have no idea if the meeting room is going to be occupied, if we have staff.
Immediately what I thought you
Yeah,
were thinking.
it's,
You were
more.
You can book the library.
Do that.
We could have it
Yeah,
at the library.
so if you are to if you were interested, you can register, all the information. on that. If
So-
not, you can wait for the next, training session to be offered.
And this is not ethics training.
No, we've had
No,
ethics,
it's follow-up from this state,
and that's why,
legislation.
which is why I thought we all had to take it, because I thought what we had was
Right.
ethics training.
I don't remember.
It was
what-
done by the Ethics
Planning
Commission.
board has things, sea level rise and, a mandatory training. I think it's 3 hours. I can find the email. I sent the email back in October when I knew, so.
Yeah, I vaguely remember getting it and thinking, oh, I don't have time right now.
Right.
Which is why I'm saying
So-
that if we set it up,
Training already.
I know I took the ethics training. I've actually done that about twice. I probably did the other, but I don't remember. I think I probably did.
I did all the prep RI
Yeah.
training, but I don't know, that was just sea level rise.
Which is,
It's on the storm tools.
Yes.
That's not this, is it? No. So if you poll us in terms of when we're free, you could schedule it at the library.
Scheduled.
Oh, yeah.
This is state.
this is through the state.
Oh,
and it's
they
on a-
schedule.
on a particular,
This number, it's not
Oh,
and it's not through the town. That's the,
Yeah,
that's
sign
why.
up.
darn.
3 hours.
The little, it's a little colored sheet. I had it. Here it is.
Reason?
Okay, it's for Monday, January 30th,
Put it on in the
from
background.
5:30 to 8:30 PM via Zoom. Advanced registration is required by Monday, January 23rd. And you all have this, it's in your,
Just the cover letter. I think that's fine.
Right.
okay.
This is
There was
now
a
in
cover
your
letter
house.
and it just there, and it was all in your mailbox. I'll tell you what, why don't you email it again? Okay. No, it's confusing. That's why I was
All right.
suggesting, but, okay, so in other words, we can't do it as a print. That's what the answer
That's
is.
too bad. 3 hours. Ouch.
3 hours is, ouch.
That's ridiculous.
Okay, all right, I need to, before you guys get up and leave, I need to make a motion that the minutes for, Wednesday, November 9th and Wednesday, where is my other set of minutes? December 14th. Are there any additions or corrections? And if you didn't get through it all, I'll wait a minute for you. Okay, you did get through them all? Yeah, the 9th was set out and the 14th are right now. And I guess it's,
Yes, they're the ones that Cory did.
got to page 3, but I haven't gotten beyond. I'll make a motion for November and then, because you read that, all right, let me make a motion to approve the minutes for November the 9th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Okay, motion carried. All right. Chris, you're excused to the other 4 of you read the minutes right now and then we'll approve them for December. Go and make sure our team wins.